Welcome to our hands-on DevOps training. Let's gain some practical skills today. In this session, you will gain hands-on experience on how to use a Jenkins Shared Library. Here is what you expect to learn. We will highlight the importance of sharing reusable components in Jenkins Pipelines to improve code management and eliminate redundancies. We will explore how Jenkins Shared Libraries feature enables the integration of external libraries into pipelines. Then we will explore also an example of how to use a shared function in Groovy pipeline. But first, let's begin by understanding the concept of Jenkins Shared Libraries and some general recommendations. For that, I will browse to its documentation. The structure of a shared library typically looks like that. We have the source. It usually includes the implementation of the costume functions variable and classes that you want to share or reuse them along your pipeline. Then we have the vars, the directory that contains the global variables that can be accessed directly from your Jenkins pipelines. Here in our structure, we define the skeleton of our pipeline and then we use our functions that we just defined in the source. And we have the resources. It can be used to store any additional resources such as the configuration files, template, etc. When you define a shared library in Jenkins, you typically create a separated repository to store the library code. Therefore, I have my own GitHub repository, Jenkins Libraries, and here is the structure that we just discussed. And for that case, I'm going to go now for the vars and to the reusable pipeline, because we're going to discuss about the reusable pipeline. But before that, in order to use that pipeline, we have to go to Jenkins and to do some management stuff. Meaning, we're going to go here to Jenkins, manage Jenkins. The Jenkins I relaunched earlier, but I'm going to share all the links after the demo. Manage Jenkins, configure system. If I scroll down here, we have the global pipeline libraries. And here is my GitHub repository, Jenkins Libraries. And I'm gonna clone the main and I give it a name. Meaning anytime that I'm gonna import the library, I'm gonna use the library import. So all the Jenkins Shared Library code of the repository gonna come together in my pipeline. So then I can reuse all the functions and the pipeline that I'm just gonna define. Let's have a look in the reusable pipeline. So the first line, we have the library top 10 DevOps. This line loads the shared library into the pipeline. Then we have a field, Groovy transformed field, a package in order to define global variables along our pipeline. In that case, I define here the SVC name, reusable pipeline. And I have a constant. Constant is an instance class. And constant is going to contain some of my global variables that I want to define one time along my all pipelines. For example, it could be organization name. So if you go to the constants, we can see here is my organization name, because I'm gonna build multiple pipelines along my lifetime. So I won't use the same organization name for all my pipelines. And for example, I have a current date also, that also a variable that I want to define every time that I'm building a package or building a Docker image. Let's go back to the reusable pipeline. And I also have an instance of Docker library and checkout libraries. Docker library gonna contain, as you can guess, some function related to Docker, meaning to build the image or get the image or deploy image. Again, because I don't want to write that function all the time again and again and in different pipelines, so I consolidate all of them in one place. Same with the checkout. Checkout, I want to get the short commit hash after I'm cloning a project. Let's go back to the reusable. Let's go over a bit the skeleton of the pipeline. So we can see here we have an agent. So the Jenkins master gonna launch a Docker agent before running the pipeline. In order to run a Docker agent, what I'm doing before, I have here a Docker file. So I'm building a Docker agent, and then I'm gonna run the pipeline in that agent. So I'm also mount the Docker socket and give it a name. If we go to the resource and Docker file, we can see how it looks like the Docker agent. It's a simple Docker agent. It's Ubuntu latest, and I'm just installing a Docker into it. Let's go back to our reusable pipeline. Then we have a clone step, where I clone a Hello World project, another project that I defined earlier just to say Hello World for our example. And here we have another stage, the build stage, and we build the image. So we call the build image function by using the Docker library that we created here, the instance. And it's defined here in the source files. So we can see what we do here. We're sending the image name and the version because the function build image knows to get a map. In that case, we decide to send image name and version. The version, we can see it will be a current date from the constant that we take it, a build ID from the Jenkins environment, and the short commit hash. And the image name is the organization and the service name. If you go to the Docker lib, we can see the build image. If you don't send the version, it will be latest. Otherwise, it's what we send on the map. So here we have the image name and the version that we just sent in the pipeline. Then we have the deploy. Same, you can go through it and to understand it better by going to the Docker lib. We can see here the deploy image, also getting the version, service name, port destination. So in order not to rewrite that function again and again, we have it in one place. That's the whole idea of the reusable function in Jenkins Shared Library. So let's go back to the reusable. So far we understood that we have two main functions that we make the reusable code. Is the short commit in the checkout library, and we have also the Docker library instance that we created here earlier, both of them. Let's go to Jenkins and run the pipeline. You can see the log meanwhile. So here we build the Docker file agent that we're gonna run into. So here's the Ubuntu, Docker, and Git, because I'm gonna use some Git commands. That's why I added Git. And here's I'm building the Docker image out of it. And I guess it's already finished, success. And I export it on port 81. So if I do refresh, here is my example Docker that I created. You are welcome to go ahead and also investigate and figure out what is the difference between the non-reusable pipeline to the reusable pipeline, because that was the goal for our Jenkins pipeline. In order to reuse function, we consolidate and restructure our functions among all our pipelines. Okay, so if you found this content helpful, I invite you to follow me for more practical tips and insights. Additionally, I offer an online course that covers the fundamentals of continuous integration, including real-world production scenarios. Join me to take your skills to the next level.